Good evening, everyone. You're in the spotlight with Brian Gardner for this Thursday, June the 6th, 2019. Good to have you all here for our second of two shows this week. We are on the air late tonight. My apologies for that. I had some issues here tonight with this setup. Happens a lot. It's not the best setup. I can't wait till we move to our new home, which we'll talk about in the coming days here. Um, so we have some changes to tonight's show. I'll get to those in just a moment. But as always, as we start the show, let me remind you all of the ways in which you can interact and contribute to our show. Have your voice heard by emailing us at itspotlight411@gmail.com. You can also follow us and tweet us at itspotlight411. Remember to use the hashtag itspotlight411 for anything you tweet regarding our show. And to find us on Facebook, search us with our full show title in the Spotlight 411. And make sure that you like our fan page once you come across it. And then you can interact with us and know what's going on with the show and more. All right, so my co-host will not be joining us tonight. I don't know if he really wanted to, but usually he doesn't like to join me on Thursdays, so I didn't bother to send him an invite. Hopefully he won't be mad at me. Usually I only bring him on Thursdays when there's a reason to. In most cases, Thursday night doesn't have a lot of reason to bring him on, so I didn't bring him on. So this is probably going to end up being a very short show tonight, and the reason for that is because I made a change. It's not because we're on the air late. It's not because of um, any particular reason on the fact that we just don't have a lot of content tonight. We will bring you this week's edition of the box office beat. We'll do the TV highlights of the week, which won't be much because it's just not. I had time this week. I just didn't get to as much. Well, I had time this week, but there wasn't as much on TV this week, and so it wasn't as much to watch. So the options were limited. I haven't had a chance to catch up on things from this past year. It's been a rough year for me watching TV. It just has. But we'll do a few things with it, with the TV highlights. We'll talk about the Game of Thrones finale, which we've been putting off for a few weeks. That's something we were going to talk about last week. I decided to wait the extra week. I figure by now most people have seen it. If you haven't, well, I don't know what rock you've been living under. But we're going to talk a little bit about that and people's reactions and kind of the broader topics related to it. Um, and the other thing we were supposed to talk about tonight was the TV upfronts, which took place back in May. We were supposed to talk about it last week, and then we put it off to this week because of we put the John Moxley stuff on last Thursday's show. We pushed everything to this week. Um, I made a decision, and this decision was based on really our fans, and also some suggestions made by people that I trust and that give me a lot of good suggestions about the show, but most notably the fans, because the fans, um, you guys are the ones that make the decisions with the show. If you dictate a lot of what happens on the show. Obviously, actually, you don't dictate a lot. You dictate everything for the most part. Um, and as I was pushing this topic the last couple weeks, um, some of the reactions were interesting because we've done this for the past this is the eighth year I've been doing this show. For 8 years we've been, I think, doing it like this, where we talk about the upfronts, TV shows canceled, all that stuff, and then we do like a fall preview in like September to preview the new TV season. Well, a lot of people over these last couple of weeks, when I've been mentioning that we're going to talk about the TV upfronts, had said, well, why are you doing that? And maybe they're newer fans, so might be why they're reacting the way they are. They'd say to me, well, why are you doing that? Why don't you just wait till the fall when the new TV season starts? Because you know, realistically speaking, the cancellations that are done, and really all you're really doing is talk about the new schedules, new shows, and everything, and really that's not really truly relevant until the fall. Now, I looked at those reactions. I'm like, okay, good points, but no, we just do this every year. And then I thought about something. Normally, when we do this every year, we kind of do it along the way. We talk about the cancellations as they happen. Then, when they first happen, usually during upfront week, we talk about all the news, the big headlines, cancellations, all that stuff. This year, we were unable to talk about the upfronts right away because we were on a 2-week hiatus, and that really just put everything. It's been almost a month since the TV upfronts. A lot of that news has kind of passed, and people are kind of over it now. Everybody's kind of moved on, and it's not that we shouldn't talk about it, but at this point, for lack of a better phrase, is beating a dead horse. There wasn't, and generally speaking, there wasn't that many big surprises. Anything that got canceled really was something that you predicted was going to be canceled. Anything that got renewed was predictable. Anything that got picked up was pretty predictable for the most part. There maybe was a few surprise renewals like the blind spot and stuff like that, but really there wasn't a whole lot of big headlines, earth-shattering things like there's been in past years, and that's probably why there wasn't a big push from people like, when are you going to talk about it? When are you going to talk about it? So when I took everything into account, the lack of interest, the fact that we weren't able to do it when we usually around the time we usually do it, which is right away, and the fact that there were a lot of people, maybe they're newer fans that thought, hey, why are you doing this now? Why not just wait until the fall to talk about the new TV season instead of just doing some things now and kind of leaving them till the fall. When I took it all into account, I decided to just, you know what, let's just pass it by and we'll talk about all the new shows that were picked up, all the returning shows in September. So it sucks because normally we we cover all the big cancellations, but again, and all the big renewals along with the cancellations. But again, we weren't able to cover this right away. And the other thing is, again, there wasn't that many big surprises and that many big headlines. So because of that, is it really if we're gonna kind of bypass it for a year? If we're gonna bypass it, this is the year to bypass it. So the change to tonight's show is that we will not be doing any discussion of the TV upfronts. So that shortens our show by a lot. So it's just going to be box office beat, TV highlights, TV picks of the week, Game of Thrones, and we're going to talk about Avengers Endgame. There's an interesting topic that's a bit interesting situation that's developing with that. We'll talk about that, and that's going to be the show. So it's not going to be a very long show tonight. Now, for those of you out there that might be disappointed about the whole upfront thing, please do send me your reactions and your comments. If you don't agree with the decision, then hey, I'm amenable to changing, my mind. I can always put it on the show next week. We will have some time next week. So if you don't like, the situation, or if you don't like this decision, then please do let me know. Again, this show is made for our fans, and if you ever don't agree with something, or there's something you want, or something you don't want, please, we encourage you to give us your feedback and let us know so that we can make those changes and make this show what you want it to be. So yeah, so that's the big change to tonight's show. Before we get into what we're doing tonight, next week, 2 shows, both on Tuesday and obviously on Thursday. Tuesday will be sports and wrestling, Thursday entertainment. So next Thursday, obviously, box office will be TV highlights. We'll probably do a couple other special things, to fill the show. On Tuesday, we'll obviously talk NBA Finals. We will do any other sports stuff we have to cover. Wrestling, we'll talk about Super Showdown, Raw, SmackDown, the whole deal. So that will be next week, on next week's shows. And obviously, we'll be going up against some finals games. I imagine the finals will go until at least the end of next week. So yeah. So that's what's coming up next week. And as far as I know, the week after that, we will also be having 2 shows, but don't quote me on it. There might be we might make a change on Thursdays. The week after, last week of June, we probably only have one because the NBA drafts that week. We usually don't air opposite that, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But right now, we'll worry about next week exclusively. And next week there is 2 shows, both on Tuesday and Thursday, at 10:00 p.m. Eastern time. So that's the schedule for next week. All right, now I want to give you some more information about what's going to be upcoming on the show, but I'm going to leave that for the end of the show. I want to get into what we have to get into as far as topics for tonight. So we'll start off as we always do on Thursday with the box office beat. And last week ends up being a fairly I won't say a down weekend, because I think for most people, Godzilla lived up to its end of the bargain. Most people thought 40 to 50. I think I even said 40 to 50, maybe 50 to 60. So it was there. Was that a disappointment? I guess so, in a way, based on how the first one did and how how they want this universe to go. It's made 190.4 million. See, for me, I think if I'm the studio, okay, if I'm Warner Brothers, I don't look at the domestic. It's weird because lately it seems like a lot of studios look at the domestic total and go, that's disappointing, but the overseas total saves it. We've been talking about that for like the last decade. But I think in this case, you might look at the domestic total and say, that's not bad. That might be right where we wanted it. The foreign total is really a disappointment. It's only at 130 million so far. That's a disappointment. I think they were hoping for a lot more there as of this point. So to me, the problem is more overseas with this movie because these movies are never going to be huge in the US anymore. They're just not. This isn't, these these monster movies and movies like, the catastrophe disaster movies, their day is gone. I think the reason for it because they're genres that have been around for so long, and a lot of them have been remade so often in many different ways that people are just burnt out on them permanently. There is fan bases that enjoy them. There are people that will flock out to the theater at some point. A lot of times they don't come out right away to see them because they figure why rush. Um, but there are people that really do enjoy going to see them. But I think as far as like, becoming a huge, massive hit, like we see so many comic book movies do, or so many like fantasy movies do, or you know what I mean. I think their day is gone, and I think that you're seeing that, and you know, I think their day's been gone in the U.S. for well more than a decade, maybe before again, maybe well before that. But I think there was a feeling among many studios that overseas that wasn't the case, and I think you're starting to see maybe it is. So it was kind of a bad, I would say, an underwhelming overall total, but domestically, I think it did probably right where they would have thought. Now, look, they already have Godzilla versus Kong, and I think that's coming out next year, so they can't do anything about that now. It's going to have to go through with it and hope for the best. I mean, it's not terrible, it's not a disaster, but it is disappointing what Godzilla did. And look, they did a lot of marketing around Millie Bobby Brown. They really tried to push fans of hers out. I just don't know if there was too much crossover. I don't know if enough of her fans were interested enough in Godzilla. Just the way it is. Um, Aladdin was probably the biggest success story of the weekend, other than Rocket Man and Ma. Um, Aladdin held up very well, only dropping 53%, 42.8 million in second week. Very good total. The film is doing much better than people thought. Um, Closing in on $500 million, so very good situation going on there for Aladdin. Rocket Man opened very, very good, 25.7 million. Did that hurt Godzilla? Maybe, because you figure Godzilla played to older audiences, and a lot of older audiences might have checked out Rocket Man, along with younger audiences that like Taron Egerton. So very good total for Rocket Man right out of the gate. That kind of makes up what happened to Godzilla. And Ma opened very, very well, much better than I thought with 18 million. I thought it was going to open like 8, 9 million at most. It's got a $5 million budget, open with 18 million. So again, between Rocket Man and Ma doing better than expected, that very much makes up for what happened to Godzilla. It does. So that makes this like a box office win this past weekend. Other holdovers this past weekend, John Wick Chapter 3 dropped from second to fifth with 11 million, a very good hold there. And then Avengers Endgame dropped from third to sixth. We'll talk about that film later with a little over $8 million. And then Pokemon Detective Pikachu dropped from fourth to seventh with 6.9 million. Everything else finished under 5 million. So when you take into account that top seven, it's a very good weekend, especially for the weekend between Memorial Day and when things start to pop again. Usually that middle week between the last week of May or first week of June, weekend of June, is usually kind of a lull weekend. This year, not so much. A very solid weekend at the box office to carry things over well into June. So all in all, Godzilla, nah, I won't say a total negative, but a negative. But Aladdin doing as well as it did, and Ma and Rocket Man more than made up for it. This weekend, you have two major new releases. Um, the biggest release is The Secret Life of Pets 2, an animated film from Universal, opening in 4,561 theaters, with the voice talents of. I can pull up the list. My list won't pull up. Sorry about that, folks. Wow, computer's going really slow. Now you see why I had problems tonight. Sorry about that, folks. It doesn't want to cooperate. Okay, so apparently that's why Box Office Mojo is updating their site. So that's the reason why I cannot, which is just bad timing because I need to use the site right now. Well, let me just look up the cast list for Secret Life of Pets right now so you all know. Um, okay, so the voice talents of Christopher Nolan, Tiffany Haddish, Kevin Hart, Harrison Ford, among others. Um, so this is expected to win the weekend. This weekend's other movie, and I can't get the theater count for you. As soon as I can get it, I'll let you know. Is Dark Phoenix from 20th Century Fox, of course, which is now owned by Disney, which is funny because it's another Marvel movie that's Disney, but technically it's not their Marvel movie. Starring Sophie Turner, Michael Fassbender, James McAvoy, Nicholas Hoult, Jennifer Lawrence, Connie Smith McPhee, Ty Sheridan. I could go on and on. The last film in the Fox X-Men side, which is what their marketing campaign has really pushed. It's pretty much since Disney Marvel took over the marketing was this is the last of the X-Men. This era of X-Men, this Fox era of X-Men. They've been trying to push that to salvage. Look, this movie, I don't know what can salvage it, even if the movie was somewhat good. And look, I don't want to go into this movie thinking it's going to be bad, even though I kind of know. Okay, I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to see. I'm an X Men fan. I'm just going to see this for the hell of it. Um, it's a shame, but given who's involved with it and everything, you kind of had a feeling this was the direction it was going to go. Um, here's the bottom line: is this nothing was going to salvage this movie. You can try as much as you want to sell it as the end of a chapter, end of an era, and all this stuff. It just wasn't going to happen. It just wasn't going to happen. And it's not because Secret Life of Pets is out, okay? Because there really was very little crossover there. I mean, yeah, maybe some kids would have went and saw X Men, maybe they were and Secret Life of Pets, but still, come on, okay? It's not about that. Really, what this comes down to is this: a lot of people were, they lost a lot of people with X Men Apocalypse. But I didn't think it was that as bad as people said it was, but still, um, as soon as the news came out about the Disney purchasing Fox and all the Marvel and all Fox's Marvel characters going back to Marvel, everybody was kind of over the X Men. They wanted to see a reboot of the X Men with the MCU. So you have that, and then you have the idea that this movie has been panned from day one. Bad stuff has leaked out about it since day one. People, it's spoilers, clips, everything. Okay, full parts of the movie. It's like X Men Origins Wolverine all over again. That's really what it is. This franchise has overcome um, all that happened to it after X Men: The Last Stand, and now it's kind of right back where it was at that point, where people are just down on it, and um, it's a shame. Oh, I had Dark Phoenix theater count 3,721. There you go. So again, there's nothing that can save this movie. The runtime, it's gotten hacked to bits. It's been delayed a couple of times. The same thing with New Mutants when it finally comes out. What was once a promising film, too many reshoots, too many changes, too many delays. It just kills the momentum. I'm sorry, it just does. So I think you have to be very modest here. I think early estimates were saying about 50, 60. I don't see it. I think it'd be lucky if he makes 40. I think 30 to 40 seems about right. And that's just because it's X-Men. So Secret Life of Pets 2 is easily going to win this weekend. I'm going to say with about 60 to 70 million. Dark Phoenix will come in second with around maybe somewhere between 30 and 40. It could even go lower. I think it's going to be disastrous what happens to that movie. I really do. Outside of that, I think a lot of last week's films, a lot of the holdovers will do pretty well. Godzilla will probably come in third, I would think. I'm going to go for around 16, 17 million. Aladdin around 13, 14 could be very close between those two, depending on how they hold up. Rocket Man around 10, 11 million. Ma will probably crash pretty hard. I could see John Wick actually beating Ma. I think John Wick will come in around 7, 8 million. I think Ma will come around 6.5 million. And I think Avengers Endgame will round out the movies over 5 million, right around $5.5 million. So that's how I see this weekend going. So the big story going is would be, well, how bad of a weekend could this be for Dark Phoenix? Because Secret Life of Pets is going to do well. Probably would have done better if they waited till after schools were out, but I digress. But that's gonna be the big story, I think, this weekend for sure. So again, Disney's gonna reboot it in the MCU, so it'll be in the end it'll be all right. But it's a sad end to a 20-year um, franchise, really. And look, about X-Men, let's be honest here. I don't know if the MCU would have existed, because if the first X-Men movie didn't do as well as it did, I don't know if comic book movies would end up where they were. I just don't. So, all right. So that's this week's box office beat. Not a very long one. Usually in summer we have some longer ones, but so far we haven't had to do that because a lot of the headlines have been pretty self-explanatory in a lot of ways. So, um, but while we're on the subject of box office and box office numbers, we'd be remiss if we don't talk about one the other box office topic I had. Because why jump around, right? Avengers Endgame, I mentioned something we're going to talk about later in the show. Um, and why are we talking about this? We already know it's broken opening weekend records. It's done very, very well. It's closing in on Avatar. Well, that's exactly why we're talking, because it is closing in on Avatar. The problem, though, for Avengers Endgame is that its pace has slowed down considerably over these last few weeks. It didn't get as much of a Memorial Day bump as a lot of people thought. Um, it didn't get an extension in China, so it got kind of cut off there. And it's already dropped below 1 million on weekdays as far as its gross in the U.S. And look, it's slowed down in the U.S. far before it's slowed down internationally. Right now, it's up to 2.72 billion. Now, what does it need to beat Avatar? Now, what does it need to beat Avatar? It needs 2.787. Okay, so you have to almost look at it as it needs 2.8. All right. Now, is that still possible? Yeah, it's possible. Here's the thing, though. Okay, it's still June. Now, Avengers is still going to. You figure it's got maybe a month left in it. Probably the week after 4th of July will be when it gets fully pulled from theaters. Even that might be sketchy because Spider-Man: Far From Home's coming out at the end of the month, and that will probably. It's like most Marvel movies. Like you saw with Captain Marvel, it was about ready to leave theaters, and then Endgame came out, and then Captain Marvel got a couple extra weeks because they packaged it with Endgame. The same thing will probably happen with Endgame if they're smart. They'll probably package it with Spider-Man. So opening night will have a showing with Spider-Man, and then it'll be around for maybe another week or two, and then that'll be it. So does it get a boost from that? It could. That could help it. Um, so as you look at it right now, it's 68 million away from of Avatar. Most people think it only has about $50 million left in it. Now, let's say that's what happens. 50 million gets it to 2.760. It needs to get to 2.788. Really 2.8, like I said. To kind of clear it. If it gets to 2.760 and it's 18 million away, I would argue for people to the end of time, Disney will re-release this movie with something. Because here's the thing, Avatar only got to that number because it got re-released. All right, it didn't do that on its own. A lot of people don't want to see Endgame do that because they think that's cheap. But here's the thing: if Avatar did it and you're trying to beat Avatar, so what? Its original gross, um, its original. I mean, I don't remember what its original gross was. Its original domestic total was 749. Its lifetime gross is 760. So it's already. I think it's already beaten that. So to me, it's already beaten its original run. It's already beaten it. So there's no shame in a re-release. And here's the thing that I think is the key. Okay, let's see how long it stays in theaters. All right. Let's see how long it stays in theaters. Okay, it's got a lot of competition, which is part of the problem. If it stays in theaters to the end of the month, and then it gets a little bit of a boost from Spider-Man, okay, the boost from Spider-Man is the key here. How much of a boost does it get if it's packaged with Spider-Man? How much of a boost does it get? Let's say right now it's at what's 2.720. So that's not including what it's going to make tonight. So remember, this is not just the US, this is worldwide. So internationally, it's added in too. So let's say it makes another what? It gets to maybe 2.723 maybe tonight, or maybe 2.2. Over the weekend, it's probably going to get close to 2.730 after this weekend's over. Okay, or into early next week. All right, by the middle of the month, it'll probably be close to 2.745, 2.750. If it's around 2.760 when Spider-Man comes out, okay, if it's around that number, and let's say, Spider-Man gets it back to like $5 million, near $5 million, even $3-4 million in the US, okay? And even you figure it's done better internationally all along. You figure you add another 2-3 million on that, that's 7 million right there. All of a sudden, it's nearing 2.70. And if it stays an extra week, it's going to be very close to that number. So this is going to be very close, I think. I think it's going to be closer than people think. A lot of people don't think it's going to make it. I think it's going to be very close to making it. I would have thought it would have been easy a month ago. Remember, I made the declaration it was going to do it. Now you can't be so sure. I think if it gets a re-release, it will definitely do it. The other thing I would say too is this: there's a possibility that, it'll get two re-releases. Let's say if they decide to release. Now, you see, this is the problem for Disney Marvel. I think this is where it's going to be tough. I don't think it's a tough decision to re-release it because they re-released Avengers, if you remember correctly, back in 2012. Um, the problem is, if you're Disney, when do you re-release it? With all the competition, with all the movies you have coming out, you can't. Now, obviously, a lot of people would say, "Well, wait till August. August is usually a quiet month." You can't do that this year. It's not a quiet month. There's a lot of things going on. Plus, they got Lion King coming out at the end of July, which will probably still be playing pretty strongly into August. So I don't think that's helpful. And then if you target early September, well, everybody's back in school and everything, and box office is usually in a lull. And then you got It Chapter 2 coming out. I don't know if you want to deal with that. To me, the best time might be the end of September, and I don't even know if it's going to make much of a difference at that point. Because again, kids are back in school, and everything's kind of kind of back in the swing of things. You can't do end of October. You got Maleficent, and then you got Frozen 2 in November. And then December they got Star Wars. So when do you fit that in? Now, let's say they choose to re-release it like in the middle to end of August. I think when they did Avengers, they released it. I think it was like around Labor Day weekend when they released it. So maybe that would be their target, Labor Day weekend. Um, so let's say that's what they do. Well, that might not be the only re-release it gets. Because if they want it to be for Oscar consideration, I think they did this for Black. Actually, I don't think they did. They did do it with Black Panther. They released it right around Oscar time, like during award season. So in early 2020, there's a possibility they re-release Endgame. Now, would it make a lot during that time? Probably not. Probably peanuts. But still, that would be additional revenue for that film. So it's not all over with here. Now, I know there's a lot of people, again, that do not like the idea of it beating Avatar with a re-release. Well, Avatar only got as high as it did because of a re-release. Every major film that's, like Avatar, Titanic, they've all been re-released. All these movies at the top have been re-released. Avengers got re-released. Titanic got released. Avatar got released. Come on, it happens. Okay, it's not cheap when they've all done it. All right, it's not. Money is money. Okay. The question is, would they do it? If to be honest, unless it was for awards consideration, I don't think Disney Marvel would have normally done it. But if they're close enough to that record, they will do it. That's my feeling. If they're close enough, if they're within 20 million of that record, they will do it. Otherwise, they'll just wait till award season and re-release it. Um, and re-release it because of the award season. They'll want it to be in circulation. The other thing to think about too is whatever movies come out next year, which Black Widow I think is rumored for May next year. Endgame will probably be packaged with that too, along with Spider-Man. Or maybe Endgame will be packaged with Black Widow and they won't include Spider-Man because, they want you to see Black Widow's last movie before that previous one. They like to do that. They like to, coordinate, like, continuity purposes. Like, it makes sense to show Endgame in front of Spider-Man because it directly connects. Black Widow would directly connect in some ways too because it was the last movie she was in. So there's a couple of opportunities for Endgame to get a little bit of a release here. So this is not over. Anybody that thinks this is it, it's not. It's not. Okay. I think it's going to be a harder climb than it should have been, but I think it's going to do it. It's going to do it. So I guess we'll see. But it's been a big topic of discussion. Should they release it, and if they do, when? My opinion, should they do it? They don't have to do it. I don't see why they shouldn't. If you're close enough, you're close enough. I'm sure there's a lot of people, and that's the other thing too. I think there's a lot of people, both internationally and domestically, that would want to see this movie. That either again, or for some people, I don't think even. I know it seems kind of crazy. There's a lot of people I know that didn't see it because they wanted to avoid the crowds, and then by the time they got the chance to see it, its theater count was kind of crashing. So there might be some people out there that really would like to see it in theaters, either again or for the first time. And if I'm Disney Marvel, I would hold back on the home release. Sometimes they rush those. I would hold back on that till like October, November, and because that way, if you do re-release it, you don't undercut yourself. That would be the way I would handle it. And I guess if I'm going to re-release it, I'd probably have to do it at the end of August and just hope for the best. That'd be the only time, end of August, early September, and then get it out of theaters before it comes out. That would probably be the best. That would be the only time that you'd really be in the clear and have an opportunity to get a lot of people to see it. Because kids would still be out of school and people would still be in summer mode, and the competition might not be as stiff at that point. But there's also competition. But there would be competition from the final days of summer and people going to beaches and camps and stuff for the last time. So you got to deal with that. But we'll see. We'll definitely continue to track where Endgame ends up here. Again, as of yesterday, 2.720 is where it's at right now. It needs to get to 2.788 to tie. Really, you just want it to clear it. You want to get to 2.8. So that's where it's at right now. So we'll see where Endgame ends up here and continue to track it over these next few weeks while it hangs out in theaters. But that was definitely, again, it's been a big topic of discussion, so I wanted to make sure to bring it up here on the show. And we'll definitely talk about it in full detail once the summer's over, when we talk about our summer, when we do our summer box office wrap up. So, all right, so that's the Endgame stuff I wanted to talk about. Now, let's jump from film to TV. Before we get to talking some Game of Thrones, which is the topic we're going to end on. TV highlights of the week. Again, there isn't a lot. I haven't been able to get to as much. I had the time. There wasn't much to get to, and there wasn't really much in the way of selections to get to. Again, there's been a lot of stuff over the TV season this year that I haven't been able to get to, but I didn't have the option of. I didn't have the resources to catch up on some of these things. I didn't DVR everything in sight that I wanted to see. So I have to sometimes wait for some things to appear on Netflix and to be re-loaded back on demand and that kind of thing. So I didn't get the chance to see as much as I would have liked because the opportunities weren't there, the resources weren't there. Agents of Shield's been great. Kind of different, very unique, a lot more. Just different feel right now. A lot of graphic horror type stuff going on in the midst of some. I mean, again, it's a Marvel show, it's a Marvel vehicle, so there's comedy involved, but maybe a little more so this past week. But I've enjoyed the episodes. I so far it's not as good as season 5 and season 4 for me, but it's holding its own. I didn't get the chance to check out the Blacklist end of the season. I think the show has finally kind of found itself again a little bit in the final couple episodes of the season. It's very much an up and down show right now. Like some weeks it's good and some weeks it's bad. I ended on an up note. I really like where they went with Katerina Rostova in the finale. Spoiler alert there. So I'm interested in seeing where they go in season 7. What else did I check out? Blind Spot, I had a great finale. I kind of got back in that show. I think they had a great end of their season, and they set up their final season very beautifully. I'm really interested to see where that goes. That had a great cliffhanger. Um, I did catch the Big Bang. I think I mentioned this last week, but I'll mention it again in case I forgot. Big Bang Theory finale was, again, I don't like the show, but I thought they did a good job with the ending of that. And then the stuff that they did, the way they were involved with young Sheldon's season finale, I thought was really good. So that was a good episode there. That show I need to watch more because I actually enjoy the show. It's just funny because I didn't like Big Bang Theory. Um, what else? What else? Um, what else did I check out? I don't think that's it. I think there's more. I think there was a couple more things. Um, I mentioned the DC shows last week. Maybe there isn't anything more. Maybe that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah. So, like I said, whatever I was able to get to, whatever I had available to me, accessible to me, I was able to get to. If it wasn't accessible to me, I wasn't able to get to it. So, I have to keep catching up. I got the summer to catch up on some of these shows that I fell behind on or that I wanted to get to during the TV season. So, I'm going to have to try to do that. Um, but yeah, that's my TV highlights. All those shows. It didn't sound like highlights. It sounded more like what I just thought of a few things I watched. But if I bring them up, that usually means they're picks of the week or highlights. So let's go with that. Um, Mike's not here, so he can't offer up some more variety. But he don't have the time anyway, so I don't think he got to. I think he probably got to less than me. So again, I'll try this summer to catch up on some things and recommend further things, but it's hard. Sometimes some weeks I have time, and then when I do have time, I tend to not be able to have the resources and the accessibility of some things that I would like to watch. And then the weeks where I do have that accessibility and resources, I don't tend to have the time. It's kind of like a can't win situation. But when I get to, and I talk about it when I'm able to. So. I'm doing my best, folks. TV picks has not been the best segment this year, but we're doing the best we can with it. So, all right. So, as short as it is, that is my TV highlights or TV picks of this week. In the spotlight, TV picks of the week. So, not a lot there, but it is what it is. So, said it was going to be quick, and it was. But this topic's not going to be as quick. Game of Thrones. This is something that we put off. Obviously, the finale was during our 2 week hiatus. Um, By now, I would imagine most people have watched the finale. If you haven't, then again, sorry, spoiler alert. I put it off long enough. We were going to talk about last week, and we have the extra week. Um, so, Game of Thrones. Why are we talking about this? Because we don't talk about any other show's finale or series finale. Well, because obviously, this is a different show. It's a landmark show. It's a show that's been very controversial in its final 2 seasons. We've talked about all the complaints about it, how it's subverting expectations, it's making people mad, how people feel it's been rushed, and all this other stuff. And again, a lot of those complaints are valid, and some of them are just, you know, people just not happy because it's not what they predicted or what they wanted. Um, I mentioned last week when reviewing the finale that I thought the final episode was very good. And again, and I think I even mentioned this too. I didn't have an issue with what where these characters ended up. My issue was with the execution of it, how rushed things were, how it looked like they got from point A to point D way too quickly and without proper build-up. My issue was with the execution, not with the results. The end results I thought were fine. I was very satisfied, really, where every character ended up, and a lot of it was where I thought a lot of these characters would end up. But the journey to getting there wasn't as good. Now, look, when you look back at this show as a whole, I think the problem is the fact that, again, and I don't want to blame George R. R. Martin because you can't force a guy to rush through writing his books. If they had the book series finished when they made this show, I think you would have seen the quality hold up in the last few seasons. But because it wasn't, you had the writers and the showrunners have to work from scratch the final couple seasons. And I think in a lot of ways, because see, I love season 6, and season 6 has, the end of season 6 is brilliant, I think. Um, but I think that if you look at season 6, they were still in a lot of ways working off of what they had. So it's still the quality I think still managed to stay up. Season 7 and 8 is where you notice a dip, and season 7 wasn't bad, and it really wasn't. And season 8 had a lot of good parts too. But I think that again, it's rushed. They missed over a lot of stuff. It just feels like they're just checking things off a checklist. It doesn't feel like they're actually making things flow and setting things up and making things kind of click together. And again, it's the idea that you know that you're up against the wall and that you're ending something, and it makes it more difficult instead of just knowing that, okay, I'm going to have another season. Okay, I'm going to have another season. And I think that that's where it got problematic. They boxed themselves into a corner. The showrunners did not want to do more episodes. If they wanted to do 10 episodes in season 7 and 10 episodes in season 8, I think that would have solved the problem right there. But they didn't want to do that. Okay, which is the problem, and which is if you have one big complaint about the showrunners is that, look, you signed on for this, end it the right way. But they clearly weren't concerned with that. Or again, they deluded themselves into thinking they had enough time, which they did not. That's really the core issue, is that they just didn't give themselves enough episodes to properly finish this show off. But all in all, there's been I've watched a lot of the best shows that television's had to offer, and some of the best shows have had terrible finales. Okay, and I've seen much worse finales than what Game of Thrones did. In fact, the actual episode was, I think, great. Okay, and again, I don't have an issue with the end results for these characters, which is a lot better than a lot of other finales, like Dexter. It's just the nature. I think if you're really looking at Game of Thrones, it's what came before the final episode that you have a problem with. The final episode itself necessarily wasn't bad. It was a strong episode. It's just that the setup before that was where it screwed up. It didn't earn what they gave us in that finale. It didn't earn it because they skipped over major beats. They rushed through everything, and so it's like you get that final episode and you're like, wow, you know what? Okay, that's great, but it's all hollow because I feel like we didn't properly build up to this point. But as far as an episode, it was a very strong, very good episode to end on. That will probably give Peter Dinklage another Emmy. So I think, and again, you're going to look at Game of Thrones, you're going to look at the first 5 seasons and call it absolutely brilliant. And it always boggled my mind, Game of Thrones, because it's such, compared to what most shows have to be in this day and age, which is quick and almost plot driven, because people don't like to sift through this constant scenes of people talking. Game of Thrones got away with it. Like the way Game of Thrones got away with being what shows used to be way back when, which were a lot of talking scenes, a lot of character building, a lot of character interactions. You'd build something up for years. The pace was very slow and it took its time. Game of Thrones, for some reason, maybe it was because of the fantasy elements, maybe it was because of how the production elements, I don't know, was allowed to be that way. And most shows are not allowed to be. Most movies aren't allowed to be that way. It was an exception to what is the new rule in terms of entertainment, is that you have to be quick. You got to get to the point. People don't want to sit. They don't want to have to wait for things. They don't want to have to, that's just the bottom line. That's just the bottom line. But when you watch Game of Thrones, you watch those first 5 seasons. It's like a theater playing away. Where you'd have these long, drawn out scenes of characters on one set, just talking, and it was interesting as all hell. It's what made the show. It's the backbone of the show. You know. So it's something that's always boggled my mind, that somehow Game of Thrones was able to still be that kind of show in this day and age of entertainment. And it's really what made this show what it was. And I don't know if other shows could ever be. I don't know if any other shows going to be allowed to be that way again. That's probably why in season 7 and 8 it really messed with people, because the show wasn't like that anymore. Just wasn't, and probably because they didn't have no time. But you know, so you say goodbye to a show that again was very unique for this time, and just it's a very special show. And I felt like the end result for the characters was fine. Again, it's just the execution of it that wasn't great. It's bottom line. But I'm not going to talk about subverting expectations and what people want, or because we've talked about that enough. Some people are just not going to be satisfied. They're just not. That's the way it is. But a lot of networks, a lot of streaming networks are trying to replicate Game of Thrones to shows similar to it, which I'm surprised took this long. Um, they can try. I don't think they're going to come close. Even on its worst day, Game of Thrones I think was better than a lot of these other copycat type shows are either going to be or already are. You know that I don't think anybody's going to come close to touching what Game of Thrones did. It was like watching a movie every week. It was crazy. So um, so that kind of extended off my review from last week. But I wanted to go into it further and kind of um, just kind of go into more detail about it. I tried to get around not mentioning spoilers, and I did. But I wanted to say spoiler at the beginning just to be on the safe side, and I got around not spoiling anything, so that's good. And I made sure I did well. I thought I was going to spoil things, I didn't. I got around it. So, but yeah, I just want to kind of expand upon my thoughts last week and kind of give the broader scope of it, because of how important to TV history that show is. Um, but yeah, so now we see what happens with the spinoffs and see what happens around the Emmys. Will Game of Thrones win the Emmys? Win the Emmys at the Emmys? I don't know. I expect Peter Dinklage will. Will the show? I don't know. We'll see if the controversy hurts or helps it. Um, but yeah, so um, but yeah, I just wanted to expand upon my thoughts on the ending of the show and the final episode. Because I only touched on it last week. So yeah. All right, so that is it for tonight. Again, not we don't have the upfront stuff to talk about, so it kind of shortened the show by a lot. Um, somebody just emailed me and said it seemed like that Game of Thrones topic was a lot of filler. You didn't really need to talk about again. Maybe not, but I thought I should kind of talk about more in broader terms, so I did. But yeah, that's it. We covered everything that was scheduled to be covered on the upfront stuff, which again I decided not to go into. So that's it. That's all we have for tonight. Said it'd be a short show. Once you check the upfront stuff out, it was so. So with that being said, that is it for tonight. As always, the show might be yours. Does not mean you have to stop interacting and contributing to our show. Continue to have your voice heard. Send us your questions about the show and the scheduling of the show, topic ideas, or breaking news items related to sports, entertainment, wrestling, want us to cover. Questions about the show and the scheduling of the show, topic ideas, reactions, comments, opinions on things we talked about in the show, things we said. All these things you can do by email, Facebook, and Twitter. You can email us at itspotlight411@gmail.com. You can also follow us and tweet us at itspotlight411. Remember to use the hashtag itspotlight411 for anything you tweet regarding our show. And on Facebook, search for our show title in the Spotlight 411. When you find our show page, make sure you like our page so that you can interact with us and know what's going on with the show and all that important, fun, cool stuff. So again, follow us on social media, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, so you can keep up with the show and what's going on with the show, and be able to interact with us. If you like to keep up, if you like to keep up with the show, whether it's episodes or just want to check out an episode again or whatever the case may be, you have two ways in which to do that. You can either stream us on YouTube, just search In the Spotlight 411 on YouTube, and when you do, you'll be taken to our show page on YouTube. We will find every episode ever produced for YouTube. That's every episode from mid-October 2015. We're up to tonight's current episodes. Episodes available for you to stream anytime you want. Just head over to YouTube and search for In the Spotlight 411. If streaming is not your thing, maybe prefer to listen to us, or you want to listen to us on the go, or you're interested in older episodes of the show, any of that applies. You check us out on our main host sites, Podbean and iTunes. Just search In the Spotlight 411 on those sites, and when you do, you'll be taken to our show pages on both sites, where you'll find every episode ever produced in the over 8 years we've been doing the show. So every episode from our original Blog Talk Radio run, every episode from our Talk Show run, every episode from our current YouTube run, all episodes available in audio format for your convenience. All episodes listed from the most recent date, that being tonight's way back to the oldest, way back in October 2010. Again, all episodes, including our YouTube episodes, in audio format for your convenience. So when you listen to us on the go, you're a longtime fan, want to check out an episode from a few years back again, or a new fan want to check an episode like that for the first time, or keep up with current episodes, you missed an episode, whatever the case would be, you can do all that and more on our main host sites, Podbean and iTunes, to search in the spotlight for, once again, Google Plus, YouTube, Podbean, iTunes, not Google Plus. I gotta get that out of my head. I keep saying that even though it's not in my notes. YouTube, Podbean, iTunes. Again, YouTube, Podbean, iTunes, your ways to keep up the show and look back at past episodes. Search for In the Spotlight 411. Again, to search for In the Spotlight 411. Oh, God, I'm glad I got the name, because I was starting to get real repetitive there. At the beginning of that, I just kept repeating the same things: reactions, comments, reactions, comments. It's been a long week. Sorry about that. I kind of, again, just sometimes you don't know. You just read off the notes and then you feel like you didn't read that part, and then you go right back and read the same thing again. Um, Sometimes it's bad, folks. Sometimes it's bad. You have stuff right in front of you and you read it and then you go, oh, I'm just going to read it again just for kicks. And that's what I did at the beginning of that spiel there. So my apologies. All right. So my co-host did not join us tonight, but we shout out to him. Hopefully he's having a good night. We'll see him back here on Tuesday. So hope Mike's having a good night. Thank myself for another great show. Pat myself on the back, and thank all of you for your continued support and contributions to the show. Thank you so much for watching, and to those that will be watching, listening to this thing. Wait, wow, woo, been a long week, folks. To those that will be watching or listening to this later in archive, thank you to you as well. There we go. I know it wasn't a very long show, but we got it in. Again, if you have any thoughts or reactions on, us not doing the whole TV upfront thing, please let me know. Again, we can make changes. Again, this show is made for our fans. So if you don't like something, or you like something, or whatever the case may be, let us know your feedback so that we always know what we can bring to you to make you happy. Within reason, of course. So yeah. So all right. So that's it for tonight. That's it for this week. Thankfully, because I'm exhausted. In case you haven't noticed, I'm repeating myself a lot, and I'm kind of straying a little bit. It's just exhaustion. Been a long week. Been up a lot with the baby. All right, I said I'd get into some stuff that's upcoming with the show and going forward here. I mentioned next week's schedule, 2 shows, Tuesday and Thursday at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, sports and wrestling on Tuesday. So we'll cover WWE, Raw, SmackDown, Super Showdown, NBA Finals, and other sports stuff on Tuesday. Next Thursday, entertainment, box office, TV highlights, and we'll probably throw in a couple of special things. I don't know if they'll be entertainment related. I'll try to make them that, but they might not be. That's next week's shows. The week after that, we should have 2 shows again. Maybe, who knows? If there's a cancellation, it'll be on Thursday that week, I'd imagine. And the week after that, we probably only have 1 because of the NBA draft. People have been asking me about what's coming up on the show. Like, we've been mentioning changes, and I got a bad rap because I've been mentioning stuff like that for years, and nothing ever seems to come to fruition because things change and things pop up. But this time I've been saying for months that this is the real truth, that there's things are going to change with us, and they are. And it's tough because we're heading into summer, and it's hard to do these things in summer, and there's always a short window of when it's the best time to do these things. But we are going to start implementing changes as early as next week. What you're going to see happen is you're first going to notice it in the structure of the topics. We're going to try to be more issue and question oriented instead of just kind of going from like one overarching topic to another. We're going to kind of just, try to be more focused and just focus on particular, like tonight when I talked about Endgame. Should Endgame be released? That kind of thing. We're going to focus on this particular question and kind of use that to spawn discussion. It will focus on headlines and, again, this particular aspects of stories, because I think that keeps things more focused. It's going to be a lot more discussion oriented. I feel like we've lost discussion. Like when Mike's on the air, I'll say something and it's his turn. There's not a lot of back and forth. We're going to go back to that. We need to go back to that, and that's something you're going to start noticing in the next couple of weeks as well. The other thing you'll be noticing, and this is probably going to be happening right around, not next week, but the week after, right around the NBA draft, is more content. Pay attention to our Facebook and Twitter feeds. It's not just going to be the show itself. We're going to be doing videos in between the shows. giving our reactions and comments on things, so you don't have to wait till when we have our next show to do that. Something I've been wanting to do for years. I'm actually going to actively try to do that, and kind of build us up during the summer. We're going to try to do that through the summer, and into the fall. Even when we get new stuff going on, when we get the new like changes to the show going on, when we're on a new host site and everything, we're going to keep trying to do that. Um, and again, I mentioned this a couple months ago when I brought up all these specific changes. The schedule is going to change now. In what way, I still don't know. I've kind of gone back and forth. I did tell you all that we were probably going to be having more shows a week, but it won't be. We wouldn't be expanding entertainment and wrestling. Wrestling, we'd probably maybe do once a month, like we've been wrestling. It won't be like it is now. When we're mixing up topics. We're going to try to keep everything separate. So sports, you might have more. Sports probably be the when we do sports shows, we'll probably have a couple a week at least, because sports is something that's ongoing every day. There's stuff to discuss. Entertainment, you can get away with only doing once or twice a week. Wrestling, you can get away with doing once a week or even once a month. So how we massage all that is still being figured out. I had an idea of mine where we do 2 primetime shows a week, which would fit what we do now. Like on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we do 2 nighttime shows, and the rest of the shows would be during the day. Um, Again, though, I'm still working on that and what times they are and all that stuff. That has yet to be decided, and that's probably going to be the last part of it that's decided. But all I can tell you is, as far as what's imminent, the structure of the show, the topics, that should be starting to be implemented next week. Expanding our content, putting stuff on our Facebook and our Twitter, like videos, it's like quick reactions and stuff. That will probably start the week after next, and then after that, we'll kind of go from there. But just kind of want to give you all a heads up on what's coming. It's going to be new. It's going to be different, but it's going back in a lot of ways to what we wanted for our show and what we feel is best and what we do best. And that's discussion, and that's interacting with the fans and giving you all a voice and that kind of thing. So you can look forward to some of these things, again, coming in the next couple of weeks, and then some things might take a little longer. But we'll keep you up to date. And I think by within the next 3 to 4 weeks, we'll probably have everything narrowed down and finalized. So, but yeah, that's about as much detail as I can go into right now. But again, I'll give you all updates as we go along here. Again, I said this on Tuesday. I was going to try to, slowly unveil this stuff as we go, because I don't want it to be too overwhelming. Because a couple months ago, I unveiled it all at once, and it was overwhelming. So, but for right now, that's all you really need to know as far as what's imminent. So again, any feedback is appreciated. So please do let me know what you think. All right. So with that being said, that is it for tonight. I hope you all have a great rest of your night, a great weekend, and a great start to your week next week. We will see you back here this coming Tuesday night, June the 11th at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time here on YouTube. Until then, have a good weekend and a good night, everybody.